Howdy, folks. It is that time again for another Vitruvian book review, and this one is very special to me. He was kind of tricky in this regard in that his writing was very simple. As a matter of fact, supposedly, The Old Man and the Sea, which ultimately led to Hemingway winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. Well, howdy, folks. It is that time again for another Vitruvian book review. Well, hey there, and welcome to Vitruvian Book Review number 28 for 2021. Hey, before we even get started, I want to ask you a favor. Please go out to jasonwrightnow.com and subscribe to the Vitruvian Letter. That is my personal newsletter where I'm constantly discussing cool books that I've read, scientific studies that I've researched on health, wellness, neuroscience, you name it. Cool documentaries that I've watched that I think you would benefit from. Anything that has helped me in my endeavor to improve always and always, I put it there in a weekly newsletter called the Vitruvian Letter, and I really think you'll enjoy that. So please, jasonwrightnow.com jasonwrightnow.com. Just go there and it automatically pops up. No / no nothing. So with that, let's get into this book review. This one was a fantastic book, and I am an aspiring writer. I want to write novels. I've had one book published, but it was more of an autobiography on my escape from corporate America, more business related. And I am currently wrapping up my first novella, a novel. I don't know. I don't even know what separates a novel from a novella. If you know, leave it in the comments. I just assume that since my book is a little shorter, that it is going to be a novella versus a novel, which I think should probably be at least 200 to 300 pages. I don't know. But I had heard Tim Ferriss, I think Ryan Holiday, maybe James Altucher, all of these guys that had done a lot of writing, they kept mentioning this one book. I think it was Tim Ferriss in particular that mentioned it over and over and over, and it's called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. So since I have set out on this journey of writing, and I write every single day, I wanted to finally start really approaching this as a student of the craft. I have decided that it's time to actually try to get some education behind me and figure out what the real writers. I'm not a real writer. I don't consider myself a real writer just yet. What are the real writers doing? And so with that, I set out to find those people who have gone before me that are best-selling authors that are actually willing to teach. I know one of my favorite reads that I don't think I've reviewed, and I need to, is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, Gates of Fire about the Spartans and the Battle of Thermopylae. He has the book, The War of Art, is a fantastic read on this subject. But as part of the Vitruvian book review and as part of my minimum of 52 books this year, I threw in Bird by Bird, and it has been phenomenal. Anne Lamott is a best-selling author who also teaches a writing class. This is a classic book, and it's an actual how-to guide for writing. And she gives the good, the bad, and the ugly, and most importantly, the reality of being a writer. And it was really confirming for me because a lot of the insecurities that I've felt, as well as some of the things that I've done that accidentally were right, she brings up in this book. So if you have actually started your journey as a writer, or if you're just an aspiring writer, read this book. I'm telling you, this book is for anyone who has any inkling of getting work published. Not even published, forget that. And that she kind of talks about that. Just someone who wants to write. You should absolutely read this. And here are some of the things that she covers that I think are just really practical advice. And there's another thing too, before I get into the weeds here. This isn't a book about mechanics. This isn't about grammar, mechanics, subject matter, plot formation. It's not a technical book. This is more of a mentor to a mentee sitting down. And this is one of the things about Anne Lamott that I love about in this book, because she's funny. She's able to poke fun at herself. She's able to bring forth her own insecurities. And it's kind of like her getting in your face in a very sweet and gentle way. And I can envision disagreeing with her at times and her going, "Oh, okay. Well, which one of us is the best-selling author? Okay, so let's get back to it." You know, she's just really she comes across a really cool lady that I would love to learn from. So, since I probably won't be able to do that, this book is the next best thing. So, uh, let's talk about writer's block. She discusses this and she says, like, look, instead of putting so much pressure on yourself to write something for your editor and all that that entails, just write a letter. Describe the story that you're trying to tell. When it comes to actually trying to get started on how to write, she says, why don't you just write about your childhood? Write and describe the things you know. Now, I want to put a pin in that for just a minute. This is one of the things that I have learned. This is one of those kind of things I go, oh, maybe I am kind of evolving into a writer. When you start to write, you start to notice things in much greater detail. Everything it has the potential of being subject matter. So therefore, you listen better. You look more. You're more present. So this truly, if you are just on the cusp of should I write? I want to write, but I can't write. And I'm going to make a comment about that, kind of the insecurity of like, I can't do that. That's not me. I'll get to that in a minute. But one of the bonuses of writing is that, and I have experienced this, is you do become much more aware of the world around you because everything is material. Everything is up for grabs. Your past, your childhood, your parents, your grandparents, the funny uncle, they all have the potential of serving as characters in a story. And it's really interesting the difference that this makes. And so that's one of the things that she talks about. It's like, look, whenever you're just getting started, if you don't know what in the world to write, write about your childhood and describe it in detail, the smells, the sights. All of us have something about our grandmother's house that we remember. All of us have some weird uncle somewhere that had this three-legged dog, maybe that was just, you had no idea how the thing was still alive. As long as you could remember that dog was there, write about that. So that's one of the things that I thought was a really, really good advice. One of my favorite lines in the book, and I think a lot of writers have this. I think this is one of the reasons why I'm drawn to writing is that I'll speak for myself. I'm an introvert in disguise. You wouldn't think since I've created a YouTube channel where I put out book reviews and I have a podcast and a newsletter that I would be an introvert. But I kind of am. I don't like to be around a lot of people if I can help it. And here's one of the things that she writes I think is really cool. And those of you who want to write, you can relate to this. Why be a writer? Because it gives you the ability to get attention without having to show up. I hate social engagements. I hate cocktail parties. I hate birthday parties. I hate anything that is a planned event where a lot of people show up. I hate weddings. I don't like any of that. So writing allows you to get attention. I've got something I want to say, but I don't have to actually show up and say it. Writing allows you to do that. I thought that was really cool. Another topic that's included is choosing how and who to proof your work. This is incredibly important. And she goes into, and here's where she gets into the concepts that she gives for anyone that's a writer is universal. I just went through this. I gave my manuscript to a close friend and mentor to read. He sent it back, marked up with grammar and everything. And my wife asked me, well, did he like the story? I said, he never said a word about the story. So obviously, and look, I'll tell you, I take that as he didn't like it. He couldn't even say, wow, good story, good job. It was purely an exercise of grammar and I guess, I don't know, contact, sentence structure or whatever. But he marked it up, and I'm grateful. Anne Lamott talks about that. You have to choose your proofreaders wisely. Now, to me, he's perfect because he took the time to do it and he didn't slam me. She talks about, look, if you have someone that you've given your work to, and they almost take delight in bashing it. That's like someone talking bad about your kid. It's one thing to say, "Hey, you asked me to babysit your kid the other day, and I noticed that he was a little aggressive, or I noticed that she was kind of, you know, stingy with her toys. Precious kid, love her, and want to have her back over, but just something you might want to think about." Same thing with a book. If you find those people that will say, "Hey, you might want to tweak this. You're not quite. This is not quite ready, in my opinion. I think you've written something here that's solid. You're definitely on the right track, but you may want to change it." Find that person that can give you criticism in a caring way, as opposed to someone that's almost like a sadist. And she talks about that. That can be tricky. How to deal with self-doubt. She covers that because listen, I can tell you firsthand that if you unless you're just an egomaniac, which I hope to God I'm not, you're gonna write things that you're gonna have that thing in your mind says, "Is anybody really gonna read this? This sucks. There's no way this is that good. There's no way that anyone would want to read my writing." She has some real life examples of things that she's gone through, and things that she does to overcome the self-doubt. And she talks about some of the funny self-talk that writers go through that it's good to hear. And if nothing else, listen to me, lean in here, aspiring writers, fellow struggling writers, listen. It's good to know that one of the best in the business thinks the exact same thing that we're thinking. Now, how about that? We may never write as well as Anne Lamott. We may never sell as many books, but we do have something in common with her. And just that little thread of encouragement was just that. It was encouraging for me. The joy of writing and why it's important to anyone who wants to do it. She talks at great length about this. Kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just a joy to all of a sudden, if you're writing, then you will start to read differently. You will start to notice prose differently. You will notice dialect. And here's a thing too. You will get some like, "Hey, it's okay" type moments. Hey, I don't blame you for feeling that moment. It's like, here's a great example. When I read dialect, it kind of gets on my nerves. I mean, I like it, but reading a Southern drawl where they drop the G's and the author is just trying to sound out the dialect through the writing, unless you're Faulkner, Mark Twain, I think Steinbeck does it some, and even Steinbeck, who's my favorite American author, it's pretty exhausting for the reader. So, but those authors that I listed, they are freaking amazing. They're really, really good. One of the things that Anne Lamott talks about in this book is if you're not really, really, really good, then just don't do it. And that gave me a lot of peace because the book that I'm just finishing up, it takes place during the Renaissance era, and so I didn't include, I didn't do any dialect, but I did do some sentence structure and some wording that was more of the time. But I took the approach. I know I will suck if I start trying to add in an Italian accent or get too haughty with the language. Instead, I structured it just so that it's a little more formal than what someone like me in East Texas would speak, but not so formal that it's haughty and I would get lost in, like, is this how they would say this? And I'm glad and I was really worried about that. Well, Anne Lamott says, yeah, don't do that. Unless you're really good and you know you're good, don't do that. And I am no Mark Twain. I am no Faulkner. I am no Steinbeck. So therefore, I am not going to try to write dialect. Really gave me a sense of peace on that point. Anne Lamott, she's funny. She's bright. She's sarcastic. She shows her sarcasm in different ways. She's um, most importantly, she is real. She's authentic. I mean, I could see sitting down with her and she'd be, I don't know. I just, it'd be cool. I watched a TED talk with her and she was out there, had some kind of dreadlocks, and she looks like an author. She just looks like a writer. And she's a badass. And now I can see why this book has been so important to so many aspiring writers. I can see why Tim Ferriss brings it up so often. Here is the single greatest advice that she gives. And I think that this book, it can be applicable not only to a writer, but any type of creator. You know, imagine, I mean, let's say that you have a book and you've got these characters, you've got all these stories, and you don't know where to start. And you're just like, how in the world do I pull all this together? How do I create something? I mean, I don't even know where to get started. I don't even know where to get started. When Anne Lamott was a child, her brother was sitting at his desk or at the kitchen table somewhere in the house in tears. He had to write this book report on birds. And there were so many birds, and there was so much to report, so much to put down. He didn't even know where to start, and it brought him to tears. And Anne Lamott's father walks by and sees his son in distress. And he puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, bird by bird, son, bird by bird. And I think that's the best advice of all. When you're wanting to start something like this, it can be daunting. There will be self-doubt. Get over it. Another thing that she writes is, don't be so concerned with what others are going to think about your work. Be most concerned about not getting your writing done. I can tell you right now, there are people that are going to see these reviews and go, this jackass has no idea what he's talking about. Why in the world would that guy? I will never go to that channel again. I know that going in. I know that whenever I put out one of my articles on my website, there are typos galore, and it makes me look like a fool. Here I'm trying to write something, and I look like a complete moron because I I just leave out a letter. My brain works faster than my fingers. Something doesn't add up. I do it all the time. And I know in this book, I know whenever I gave that book to my mentor to read, I knew there were going to be so many problems with the grammar and sentence structure and all that. And so therefore, there's this risk of I can do things to play it safe. I can stay right in my most comfortable lanes and appear to be, I don't know, smart or accomplished or whatever. But I I have finally reached a point where whatever anyone thinks of me pales in comparison to just getting the work done, because here's what I know. I know that if I keep coming on here week after week after week, doing report after report after report, or review after review after review, eventually I'll get better and better and better and better. And it's more important to me that I get the work done, get it done, because as another thing that Anne Lamott says, you don't have time. You don't have time to sit around and become perfect. You don't have time to get to the point where, all right, everything you do is going to be accepted, wonderful. You don't have time. That will waste your time. Get to the work. Do it. Just get started. And even if it seems daunting and you don't know where to begin, just remember, bird by bird. That's it. I hope you like it. Please subscribe to the channel. Again, please subscribe to the Vitruvian Letter. And then most importantly, I hope you will listen to the Jason Wright Show, where I am interviewing people that are amazing. They're remarkable. They're doing cool things. And I am using that platform, my podcast, as a way to reach out to exceptional people that are doing cool things that I believe can help me improve always in always. Thanks for tuning into this book review. Check back next week. I'm not sure which book I'm going to review, but we'll have one. And that's it. Crush your day. Thanks.